So this is a video on how to factorise a quadratic where the x squared term is not just equal to 1. So these ones are slightly more difficult and they require kind of a bit more common sense and trying to think a bit on the spot as well. But essentially what we're trying to get to is the same thing. Remember, we're factorising, so we're just trying to put our quadratic into two brackets. Now in this case we've got a 4x squared term. So there's kind of two neat ways of getting that. So we can either have 4x and x as our lead terms. So that's one solution. Alternatively, we could have two lots of 2x. We don't know at this stage which one is correct, which one we're going to need. So moving on, the next thing to think about is the number. So in this question we're actually quite lucky because we've got a -2. So really there's only two ways of getting to a -2. You can either have -2 times 1 or 2 times -1. So that's really helped us out in this question in the sense that we don't have to try a million different pairings to try and get to our answer. So whereas for a simple quadratic where the x squared term is 1, our next rule was to think, okay, well, what happens when we add these two together? Does that get us to our x term? That doesn't quite work in this case because remember, where you place your number will actually affect the outcome of your multiplication. For instance, if we took this -2 and 1 pairing, if we place the -2 in this bracket, then that is actually going to give us an x term that's quite high because -2 is going to be multiplied by the 4x and the 1 term is only going to be multiplied by the x. Similarly, if we considered it down here, this term, in both cases they'd be multiplied by 2x, so that might work. Now one of the things I've spotted with this question is that we're trying to get to 7x. Now considering we've only got -2 and 1 to play with, that's actually quite high. So that kind of prompts me to think that we're going to need to use this first option here, which has got our 4x, which is the highest term, and that we're going to need to place our 2 in this bracket because we need to get to as high as possible really. 4x times 2 gets us to 8, and therefore we know that the 1's got to go in the other bracket. We want this to be positive because we're trying to get to positive 7x, and therefore this has got to be negative because we still need to multiply to get to -2. And it looks like we've got to our solution, which we can check. So just coming down here, what does that get us? So adding on my eyebrows, nose and mouth, we've got 4x squared -2 minus x plus 8x. Simplifying, that gets us to 4x squared plus 7x minus 2. Okay, which is what we wanted to get to. So I guess the tricky parts on these questions is always the placement of the numbers. And when you've got a lot of pairings, it can be quite difficult. So this is where it's really important to be able to multiply out brackets in your head and become really comfortable with how that works. And just try and apply a bit of common sense here. So think about how the placement of the numbers affects what is going to be multiplied by what. Okay, brilliant.